We're going to look at how you create a Performance Max campaign in Google Ads. Now, a Performance Max campaign differs from a search campaign in a few ways, but the main thing is that it has no keywords. If you create a search campaign in Google Ads, you have to choose keywords. You have to second guess what people are typing into the internet that you think should bring them to your website. And that's not always easy. It can be really difficult to guess what people are thinking and searching for. Um, so Performance Max offers you a novel way to target people. Instead of keywords, you define your audiences. So you try to figure out demographically what they have in common, what their interests are, what their intentions are, and also you can use your own data, which could be visits to your website or your YouTube channel, to try to guide Google Ads with some signals as to who should see your ads. Now, the example we're going to do today, I'm going to use the website for the Alliance for the Great Lakes. Now, they have quite a well built out website. They have donation page. They have information about the lakes and the environment and water usage. They have petitions that people can sign. They have beach cleanups where we try to send a lot of volunteers, but we already have ads for those. So what we're going to do today is create a Performance Max campaign aimed at teachers and educators, because on their website they have a well built out page for exactly that purpose. So this is always the starting point for any campaign, whether it's Performance Max or search. The landing page is the most important thing. People must be able to come to here and take actions. So there's no point sending people to the website unless they can do something. And here we have actions to take. We have all sorts of curriculum information in PDF documents that we would like educators to see. We also have links to other pages where they can take actions as well and read more information. So let's get started. Logged into Google Ads. This is their ad grant account. They have a paid account too, but this is the ad grant. And I go to the campaigns option in the menu, and I look for this big blue plus icon, which is how you create most new things in Google Ads. And I create the campaign. I click the new campaign button, and I'm given options. It's asking me essentially, what am I aiming to get? Leads, sales, website traffic. But in an ad grant, we just choose without guidance. We don't really want it to alter the recommendations it gives us too much, which is all that does. It's entirely optional. And we've got two campaign types. We're not going to do search. This lesson is all about how to use Performance Max. So we choose that option. But I need to point out something here. There's a bit of a fib. It says that Performance Max will reach people wherever they're browsing with ads on Google Search, YouTube, Display, and more. Now, that's not true. Currently, as of early 2026, Performance Max only puts ads onto Google Search and Google Maps, not on YouTube, not on Display. So, for example, there's no point adding a video to your ad because it will never get shown. However, it's entirely possible that later this year or in the future, new inventory will be added and ads might get placed in some other places. I'm making an assumption here that you already set up conversion tracking. If you haven't, there's a separate lesson that we're doing about that. If you have, you should be given options here. Now, I'm just going to go with what's here. This is the account default. So the conversions will be things like clicks to other websites, donations, contacting the organization, signing up for the newsletter. I might add one though. I might well add one for people downloading PDFs, but that's a different lesson. where should people go after clicking the ad? To this page. That's the URL of it. In fact, most of the information I'm going to get from the page itself. So I'll click there and I'll continue. And I'm going to name it. I have a certain way I do names. I always put at the front whether it's a grant account. I do a little upright pipe. I write PMAX so that I can at a glance distinguish between my different types of campaign. And then I write what the topic is. So I'm going to write educator resources and click continue. This is the bidding strategy. And we've only got two options. If this was a search campaign, there would be others. We can choose conversions or conversion value. Now, conversion value would only be useful for websites selling things or that was very focused on donations. Even then, that doesn't tend to work well in an ad glance, so choose conversions every time. Optionally, you can set a target cost per action. Now, what this does is it gives Google Ads something to aim for. This can be a good idea sometimes. Sometimes it can help your campaign to kickstart and get impressions quicker. But I don't tend to do this at first. I come back and do this once I know how much it really costs to get a conversion. Once I've maybe got several months of data, I've got several dozen conversions, I know the average cost. I'll come back and I'll put a figure close to that in here. It can sometimes help, but it's entirely optional. We're not going to adjust the bidding to acquire new customers. We're going to assume that pretty much it's irrelevant for our purposes. It's the kind of thing where if you were a shopping website, maybe you would do it. Now we can choose who's going to see these where. Now, you can actually choose all countries and territories. There used to be an ad grant rule that you had to define the countries or the local area. That rule's kind of unofficially disappeared. However, I recommend that most of the time you choose a location. It's the Great Lakes. This isn't suitable for the entire US, just people in a few states. So, it's the top of my head, I can't spell, Wisconsin, Illinois, now we keep on until I have got all the states that I want in here. And I can go to advanced search mode. And in there, I can see visually the areas that I'm covering. So Michigan, don't forget Michigan, there we go. And so I'm drawing in my areas. I can also do this, I can use radius targeting. What if I wanted to target anybody living within 100 miles of Chicago? There. Now that's really handy if people are, for example, traveling. I mean, what if you were recruiting volunteers? You could recruit them within a certain distance because you know they're not going to travel much further than that. You also have what they call pin mode. So I can click on the map to include, as I've chosen up here, within 100 miles. And you can draw a number of these radii until you've got the exact area you want. I'm going to save that for now. I'll come back and tweak that and improve it later. Generally, it's better to choose this option here for people in your location or regularly in, not people just with an interest, because they could be anywhere in the world. Language, important. This can only be set at the campaign level, as can the geographical targeting. So if you want, for example, to run ads in Spanish or French, those have to be in separate campaigns. We've got English, that's correct. No, we do not run political ads in the EU. It will ask you, you just tell it no. And there are other options. We're not going to choose any, but I'll just run through them. You can schedule your ads to only be shown at certain times of the day. You can set an end date. Now, I will often do that on a campaign that has fixed end date. This might be your end of year campaign, 1st or 2nd of January. I switch it off, so I put an end date in. Maybe I want to do the campaign, but not start it until a week later. Well, I've got the option here. Um, leave all of these options available. There's no point in an ad grant, which can sometimes have difficulty spending the daily budget, only picking mobile phones, only picking computers. Have it available to all of them. I'm skipping over a couple of options here that really aren't relevant. Brand exclusions, you can do it. For example, if your brand name is a little bit similar to the name of a company or some other non-profit, you could put their brand in here to exclude people searching for them seeing your ads. I've also once or twice had to do this where, for example, our ads were coming up for another non-profit's brand name when they shouldn't have been, even though we weren't specifically targeting that. Well, you can stop this from happening here. And I rarely choose to do demographic exclusions. Certainly not when I'm starting a campaign. Maybe I come back and tweak this in a few months based on some data, but I don't really want to exclude any ages or genders. Okay, I click next. Now we get into the AI bit of this. One of the things that Google says is a great bonus to you is being able to use AI to write your Performance Max campaign. However, I don't always find it works particularly well. It does help if your landing page is really well written and if the words on here are just persuasive and well chosen, because Google Ads is going to look at that and try to create headlines and descriptions for your ads based on it. So if you want to do this, you can put in your URL. You can give it some idea of the products or services you're advertising. Now, obviously, that's language that businesses would understand. But for your nonprofit, just think in terms of what you're offering. So, lakes and rivers, environmental activism, environmentalism. The good news here is I think Google Ads has done a fairly good job of honing in what this is. It's even figured out that this is educational, and put in a couple of services around that. You can add others. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. And then what makes your products or services unique? Now this is just text, and you can just, if you want, take a ton of text from the website, copy it, paste it in here, and see what it comes up with. Further to that, it can even look at your social media. It can look at your Facebook and your Twitter and your Instagram and so on. Well, whether that's a good idea or not depends on how well you use each of those. I'm going to click next. Don't normally do this. I suggest you maybe do it once to see how accurate it is. I'll show the results in a second. So we need to name our asset group. Now, if you've done a search campaign in Google Ads, you'll be used to it having an ad group. And in that ad group, you've got keywords and ads. Well, PMax is structured differently. Within your Performance Max campaign, you can have multiple asset groups. So I usually recommend only having one Performance Max campaign on your account, unless for language or geographical reasons you need more than that. What are we going to call our asset group? Educational resources, maybe? And the business name, I've already put this in before and it's remembered, Alliance for Great Lakes. Now, it's actually Alliance for the Great Lakes, but that doesn't fit. There's a really weird 25 character limit on this. And if your charity is one of those with an enormously long name with the word foundation in it, yeah, you'll have to find a way to shorten that. And logos. So you can add logos and you can pick an image. You can edit that image. I've managed to find two logos that fit. one of them rectangular, one of them square. There's little editing icons. There's a little pen icon here, and you can choose square versions. So you can do things like this to try to um, choose the exact bit of the logo you want to appear, or hopefully you can find a wider version. It can be awkward to do this. It really helps if you've got good quality logos that are already in several different formats. So I'm just going to go back there. I'm not really going to do that. I'm going to cancel that. I'll just show that you can actually get it to search your website. So if I do this and search the site, it should figure out which on your website are the logos, and you can play around with those. Or if you have a good quality one on your computer, you can upload it. Okay, moving on. There are options in here to choose colors. Now these colors will sometimes be used in the ads. Now I've done this before and it's remembered. So I've chosen a couple of colors that are used on the website. You can also alter the font. However, I almost never bother to do this. You don't have many options. Entirely up to yourself if you want to. Right, now we come to the assets, and Google has in the last couple of years started calling almost everything an asset, which I sometimes find a little bit confusing, because different people sometimes mean different things when they say an asset. But for our purposes, an asset is a headline at the top of an ad. It's the URL that you're taken to. It's when somebody clicks the ad. It's the descriptions, which are the longer bits of text that go at the bottom of the ad. And then all sorts of other things that you can add, like images and video and so on. Now, I'll take you through this. So you can have up to 15 headlines. Be varied. Also, bear in mind that these get shown in random combinations. And on the right, you can preview this happening. You can click and see what your ad might look like. But when you think about it, there's a massive number of combinations. So don't worry too much about making the messaging perfect, because over time, what will happen is Google Ads will figure out which combinations work best. It'll figure out that this headline works best paired with this one, that this description works best than the others. And it will tend to show the best performing combinations the most often, while still occasionally testing some outliers. When you are previewing, ignore display, ignore YouTube, ignore all of these previews. Possibly one day PMAX ads in an ad grant will appear in Google Discover or in Gmail. Very unlikely they'll ever appear in YouTube or display. But for now, it's just search. So that's what you want to focus on. Right. Make sure that your brand name appears in one or two or three of these headlines in some form or other. Some of these should be an ask. So you should be asking people to do something, a call to action. There should be context. So here, teach students about lakes. Now, bear in mind that the AI wrote this. I didn't. I don't particularly like these. I think I will change that to teach students about the lakes. Notice that the capitalization doesn't really matter how you capitalize, so long as you are consistent. Do your headlines the same way each time? Do your descriptions the same way each time? Some of these don't work for me. Dive into the Great Lakes. I feel that could be advertising swimming, if you take that too literally. And it's not about exploring the lakes. That sounds like tourism. So I might change these. So Great Lakes, students. Environmental teachers resources. Environmental teaching, that's quite a good one. Environmental education tools. Now it's popping up suggestions for me. That's quite handy. teach and learn about lakes. I quite like these. Now, it does usually forget to put the name of the organisation in, as it has. So, Alliance for the Great Lakes, here we go. You've got 30 characters. It can be difficult to be that concise, but that's worked. So, Alliance for the Great Lakes lesson plans, Great Lakes curriculum, Great Lakes in your classroom. Actually, most of these are okay. Now, I would spend longer than this. I would take a good 10 to 15 minutes to craft my headlines and descriptions properly. And I would look most of all at the landing page. I'm going to assume that this particular nonprofit, that somebody has taken time to craft all of this. So the wording on here should be what I try to use in the ads. So I'm reusing bits of text that I find here. Elementary, middle school curriculum. That's good. Now that's context. If I say elementary and middle school, the person who sees the ad will know if it's relevant. Can't always fit in all the words that I wanted, so I rewrite that slightly. Okay, so that's headlines. I will also say that it can be good, depending on what you're doing, to sometimes put emotional language. For example, if you're raising money for people in need somewhere in the world, you might want to use a more emotional tone. But you might also want to be more factual sometimes. You could say something like, you know, help families out of poverty, and then you could have a stat in one of your headlines, like, we've helped 500 families out of poverty, something like that. Now onto the descriptions. Well, actually, first, long headlines. Well, you usually get one shown at a time, I believe. They're up to 90 characters, so we can give a longer message here. Let me see if all that will fit. It will. Great Lakes in my world. K-12 curriculum and free lesson plans. I quite like that. This one, explore the Great Lakes in your classroom with engaging resources. That's good. Empowering students. Empower your students to understand the Great Lakes. Now, like I said, I would craft this much more carefully. Notice that I'm not taking the time here to make all of the capital letters consistent. You would do if you were doing this for real. Now, moving on, descriptions. These appear under the headlines. So your headlines are here and underneath your descriptions. You get 90 characters. It's so much easier to craft a message in 90 characters. So essentially do what you do for the headlines, except here you're adding much more context and explanation. The things that maybe you found difficult to explain in 30 characters, you can do here in 90. And again, keep it varied. Try to make sure your brand name appears in one or two of these. Also the audience, whoever this is for, like here, free resources for K-12 teachers. Try to put who the audience is in here. If it's a donor, make sure you're asking for a donation. If it's a teacher, mention that these are resources for teachers and so on. Okay, now images. When you, if you've got a brand new AdGrant account, you might not have this available. Sometimes it takes a few months before you can use images. It's going to suggest images. It's going to generate images. Personally, I'm allergic to the idea of AI images being used for a real life charity. I just don't think we should do this. I think we should only ever use our own images. I think it's more honest and transparent. Your feelings may differ. I prefer to use what I find on the website. The first thing I do is go to a website or social up here, much as I did for that logo, in the URL and see what it comes up with. And it does come up with a picture of children studying. And when it does this, it produces several versions because ads can get shown with images in different dimensions. And you can tweak this. Actually, that one's fine. This one, maybe I'll just focus on the group on the right. There we go. I don't want to have half someone's face in. And again, focusing on the girl with the tablet, and I can still fit these two children as well. And you would add up to 20 images. I usually add a dozen at least. Let's see where else we can add these from. Free stock images, again, I dislike doing this. I think you should always use your own images. You can upload them from your own computer. Also, if it's images you've used before, they'll be in your asset library. So I've created many campaigns for this particular organization, so I can go here. But are they relevant? The ones of people picking litter are not relevant to educational resources. It would be good because we're talking about students. If there were pictures of children in any of these, well, maybe I'll have that one. It's got kids in there. There we go. But other than that, not many of these are really relevant. I'd probably have to go hunting for some more. Now, videos. Now, this is an awkward one. It asks you for a video and your ad strength at the top, which is a kind of an indication of how well Google thinks your ad will perform, will improve if you add video, but they don't get shown. In an ad grant, videos you upload do not get shown. Will they perhaps one day? Probably not. It's actually quite unlikely that, for example, YouTube is ever going to be somewhere that ad grant ads show. I do sometimes, if I've got a video, I might just add one. Simply because if they ever do open up the program to YouTube, it'll be ready. That campaign will work there. And I've got a couple I've done before. There was a Giving Tuesday one there. None of these are relevant to what we're doing, so I'm going to skip past. Sitelinks. Now, you can create sitelinks here, or you can use the account level ones. And I almost always add my sitelinks at account level. Now, I've got a separate lesson all about sitelinks, so we're not really going to get that into that now, except to say they're extra links that get added to your ads in case people aren't interested in clicking on the main headline. But the problem here is they're not relevant at all. It's done a really bad job, and it usually does a bad job. This is about teaching resources for students. These are not useful, so I've removed them. But I still have the account level ones that I've created many months ago. Scrolling down a bit. Call to action. Now this is different. Search campaigns don't have this, but PMAX campaigns can have a little button on there, which would be fantastic if there was some perhaps more useful ones. I end up choosing learn more, but I think that's a bit weak. Sometimes I use sign up. Be download. These are about teaching resources. They are for download. I'm going to choose that. I'll find a few other options. This one is hidden away, but is actually useful. They hide that in more options. Teaching resources doesn't fit. I'll do teaching resources. So what happens is this isn't the real URL people are taken to, but in the preview you can see that it appears to people that they're going to greatlakes.org/teaching/resources. This is contextual. It's telling people this is where you're going to be going. It's kind of confirming and reassuring that, yeah, you're going in the right direction. This is for teaching resources. And they might see that before they even see the headline. There's an option here called URL rules. If you wish, your ads can get shown for other pages, not just the one you're trying to take people to. So what if you had quite a number of pages of resources on this website for teachers? But we don't. We just have this one about educating youth. If you did, you can put URLs in here. And you don't have to put the entire URL. You just can put, say, a word from it. So if you had a whole section of a website that with the word teacher in it, you'd write the word teacher in here, and then any of those pages would be used for an ad to point out. And Google will choose that automatically, which page it sends people to. It could be a very good idea, depending on your website. It can certainly lead to more traffic, but don't do it if this ad is only really relevant just to the one page. Asset optimization. This is a group of settings where Google will kind of automate stuff, and some of this can be a good idea, some of it isn't. The final URL expansion, well, that was that thing above where it says URL rules. It's going to expand the URL beyond the one that you chose and send to other pages. If you think that's a good idea, leave it on. It kind of depends. You might end up with traffic going to some of the most useless pages on your website that don't have calls to action, that aren't well written. If you have a blog, for example, you don't necessarily want people seeing being taken to the hundreds of blog pages. You want to direct them to your donate page, your sign up page, your important pages, your relevant pages, in which case you would turn this off. The option above is simply saying that Google can rewrite the ads slightly to customize them depending on the page to land on. I tend to have either both of these on or both of them off. And in this case, I will turn them both off. I don't think they're relevant here. Image enhancement. I leave these on. It'll slightly improve your images. If they're a bit dark, it'll lighten them and so on. Landing page images. Do you want to allow Google Ads to automatically, if it so wishes, pick a picture from your page to use in the ads? And I suggest not always. It depends. If I've got that final URL setting open and people can go to any page, it makes sense. They're more likely to get a relevant image. But in this case, I know the exact images I want. I don't want it to add others. I'll still let it enhance them and improve them though. Video, well, that doesn't get shown anyway. You might as well leave that setting on. And then we come to the thing, finally, that makes Performance Max different to a search campaign in a big way. No keywords here. Instead, we've got these signals. And what's important to realize is these are just signals. When you are defining your audiences, you are not limiting it. You're not filtering it. You're not filtering anything out. You're not saying only show to these people. You're telling to Google, this is kind of the person we want. This is kind of their interests, kind of the demographics. And then Google will use all of these signals to try to put ads in front of people who are likely to convert. Okay, so first we get search themes. These are things that people are likely to be searching for that will be relevant. So lakes, teachers, teaching resources maybe. Excuse my spelling. Environmental. Lessons maybe. Environment. Lesson plans. Teaching about ecology. I could put loads of these in. I might put some in that are more relevant to the local area. And these are not keywords. They are not going to be matched exactly to what people are typing in. That's not how it works. Instead, these are just general, as it says, themes. So you don't have to worry that these aren't the exact words people are typing into Google. And then I get to the audience signal. And here's where you're going to get something entirely new. I'm assuming you've connected your Google Ads account to Google Analytics. If so, you should have some audience data from your website, which can be used to target the ads. So essentially what will happen is that Google Ads will look at the people who visit your website and try to get you more people like those people. And when we search in here, all users, well, that's an audience from GA4, which is Google Analytics. That's what they call Google Analytics now. It's the recent version. Website visitors. So yeah, we're going to use the website visitors as a guide. And we have a customer list of signups. I'm not going to use that. That was very specific to people signing up for a support newsletter. That's not really relevant to teachers. And nor am I going to choose purchasers because I have to know that's donors. So we're not going to use donor data or newsletter sign up data. We're just going to generally use website visitors as a guide. And then we scroll down and we get to the additional signals. And we're in luck here because we have some very relevant ones to choose. You can always search and browse. I always do both. Sometimes when I search, I find things I didn't find when I browsed. And when you're browsing around, you get more of an idea of the structure. So let me just look again at what comes up. It's put some suggestions here. Outdoor enthusiasts. Well, that's quite clever. It knows this is about the Great Lakes, but we're not looking for people to go hiking or do an outdoor activity. I'd use that for people volunteering to clean a beach for certain. School curriculums, absolutely, that's a good one. Homeschool educational resources, not one I'd have thought of, but yeah, why not? Middle school and elementary, it's probably noticed those words, which are somewhere on here. It mentions middle school and elementary. I saw it earlier. It's noticed those words and it's recognised the relevant. Online resources for teachers. All of these are fine. So I've chosen those. And I could search for others. I could search for education. And education in market. Let's see what it says. Over on the right, it's popped up an explanation. And this is people interested in education programs, services, or tutoring. This is not helpful. This, if we chose it, will be putting ads in front of people who want education. What I want to do is put it in front of people who work in education. Fortunately, we have a way to do that. If I get a browse, we have a detailed demographics section. And I happen to know there's an employment section. And I happen to know that within that, there's industry. And within that, education. That is how you target teachers. That wasn't easy to find though, was it? So just go through what these main categories are. In market is people looking to buy something or do something almost immediately. That's great if they're a potential donor. It's great if they're interested in volunteering. If you can find an in-market audience, that's almost the best form of targeting. But Google Ads was built for businesses, not charities. You won't necessarily find an exact match for what you're doing. There's life events, and I use this a lot. Business creation. Well, imagine that you're a non-profit helping entrepreneurs, a chamber of commerce, for example, and most of these are in the same format. You can target people who recently started a business or those starting a business soon, which is the option I use a lot. There's some other useful ones in here. People who've just got married or marrying soon, moving soon, retirement. I've used that one quite a few times for ads for retirement homes, for example.